Thank you for joining Beyond the Workbench, a podcast where Odin and Michael Magnus discuss life, business, and how to help entrepreneurs grow and innovate.
So we're back again for another episode of Beyond the Workbench. We have a really great guest that we'll be talking to in a few minutes. But before we do that, let's just do a little bit of a catch-up. What's been going on with you this week and really over the last 2 weeks with you and your business or businesses, Magnus?
Well, there's always something exciting going on, but I think something I've really been focused on the last couple of weeks is completing projects. And I have a tendency to juggle a lot, as I know a lot of us do. And so really that's been my focus the last few weeks, has really been just looking at, okay, what are the three things that I need to do that I've been putting off for a month and a half, that if I just finished them, this project would be totally complete and I could check it off and kind of have fewer open loops at a time. I'm pretty guilty of trying to multitask because I think I can do it well, but in reality, just getting some stuff done really frees up my headspace to be able to focus better. So that's really been my thing, is just trying to complete some things and close some loops, and so I can give more attention on some new things. So how about yourself?
I should probably be taking your lead on these things, because I'm definitely in that same position where I've got a lot of things going on, and it doesn't seem like I'm closing or checking the bigger projects off the list as quickly as I should. But it's definitely apparent to me this last week or two that we're getting ready to go into the fall. Not only has things happen with the kids going back to school and all the things go along with that, we've got football and volleyball going on, of course, but there's also the bigger projects. We've got some state fair stuff coming up. We've got customers calling us, asking us about, hey, can we fit one more thing in for the fall? And I know it's not even September yet, but I can already feel the pressure building for this holiday season. So on one hand, it's great that people are coming up for the holiday season, already thinking about it. The customers are coming back. That's, when it comes down to the marketplace and the economy, you just never know what's going to happen every year. I feel like we're going to be fine this year, but it also means that I've got to get as organized as possible quickly so that we can manage these things better. I don't want to do fewer projects. I want to do more projects, but I want to do them all great. And so the pressure's on me right now. My team, my wife and everyone here, they will be fine. They are great. But I don't want to be the bottleneck. I don't want to be the reason why things aren't moving as efficiently as possible. And so I've got maybe another week or two for me to get my act together, right? Get organized and get everything lined up so that we can all be great as we go through this season. That's where I am. And then also just dealing with, normal business stuff, right? I think I told you I'm having problems with internet and, services and things like that, moving from one service vendor to another service vendor. It's always something. Running a business is not for the faint of heart, It's always going to be something that gives you a little kink in your day, and you just got to be willing to deal with it. And I think some of that we're going to hear in our guests as well, right? I mean, as we had a really great conversation with our guest this week.
Yeah. And so for everybody, just a little bit of an introduction. For tonight's episode, we interviewed Jeff Bean of CJ Bean Saddlery in Utah. And he's someone we actually had the opportunity to meet because he took our pair of classes in Sheridan, Wyoming. And he was great to have in there because he has a good sales background. So it was quite a few times that he made some great contributions and comments through the class. And we thought we might kind of bring him in to share some of those things with you all as well, because he has not only done some corporate sales, he's built and sold several different companies and been very successful in that, just generally in that sales arena, which is an area that, at least I can say for myself, can sometimes make me a little uncomfortable. So had some great tips and excited to kind of share what he had to say with everyone.
So let's not delay. Let's go ahead and jump into the conversation with Mr. Jeff Bean.
All right. Well, Jeff, thank you for joining us. A lot of makers in the industry say that sales kind of feels uncomfortable or unnatural, but you've built a career on it. So let's start here. Tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got started. I know you've had a broad career in building and selling businesses and sales, and so give us a little background.
I actually started, in the taboo of car sales. When I was 14, my dad owned a car dealership and I started selling cars at the age of 14. And that's really when I learned my technique of selling. And I've got pushback my entire career from different leadership every time I've gotten into a new company, new role, immediately I get pushed back until I'm at that company for a month or two. And then they usually just get really quiet because they're like, oh, this guy is like crushing his number. Like, I guess that approach works. But yeah, I mean, I remember selling cars and my dad jumping down my throat saying, like, you can't do that. You can't do it like that. You're not going to sell anything. You're not going to sell anything. And I mean, I sold a ton of cars from the age of 14 to 16. So that's kind of where I got my start in sales. I wouldn't say I loved it, but it made me a bunch of money when I was young, where I had fun on my summers. But when I graduated high school, I lived just outside of a large cattle ranch in Florida. And so when I graduated, I went and cowboyed, had my dream job. Best job I've ever had in my life. Still is the best job I've ever had in my life. Did that until I decided to move out to Utah to go to school to get an education so that I could advance myself in the agriculture management world until I married a Utah girl, a city girl. That totally changed my career path because I was not going back to a ranch anymore because she was not going. So changed my major to go into business. And my family, we didn't have money. I had to put myself through school. So I started working at a bank and I was told I had to get a degree. I started selling loans and crushing it. So I got a promotion. And then I was told, well, to get another promotion, you have to get a degree. Well, I was crushing it. So they gave me another promotion. Shortly after that, I became a VP at Zions Bank. Kept getting told I needed a degree. And really, that wasn't the case. As long as I sold and crushed it, that's all that mattered to them. So that's kind of where I started off and how I kind of got my feet wet in the world of sales. My kids, I have 4 children. And I tell them, I tell their friends, I tell everyone this, no matter what job or career you pick, you will do sales.
Absolutely.
Whether you're selling to customers or whether you're selling to your boss. But what I'll share with you is early on in my life, someone shared a quote with me that has stuck with me and literally guided my professional and personal life. And that is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that is literally how I've done all my sales. I mean, geez, Salesforce, that was the last big sales job I had. I'll tell you what, they are a machine. They have a very specific way of doing things. And when I did not step in line and do things the way they wanted it done, I got major pushback until they all of a sudden saw me within my first year have a 73% close rate, which is unheard of, especially for a first year. They're like, wait, what is he doing different? And I'm like, I listen to people. I find out. I don't just sell them everything in the book. I sell them what they actually need. So they want to buy from me.
I've been a customer of Salesforce for a number of years, right? I bought a lot of products from them. And so I'm familiar with the organization and things like that. So as you were talking about your background, you mentioned several times that, you didn't fit the mold. I think I have an idea what you mean when you say you didn't fit the mold, but could you maybe elaborate a little more on what makes you different? Why are you going against the grain when it comes down to the other way people are being taught to sell?
Every salesperson I've ever met loves to talk. They love to talk. They get in there and they're your buddy and they're talking your ear off and they're just like, oh, I can hook you up with this. I can do this. I can get you this, blah, blah, blah. That's just not me. I just go in there and be like, hey, how's it going? So, what's your problem? What's going on? What do you care about? The actual individual I'm talking to, I know what the company needs, but you, who I'm talking to, what do you care about? What's going to make you look good at this company? That's where I start.
I remember I used to teach advertising. I was an advertising professor for a number of years. And one of the things that was always kind of key in teaching around the topic is just the idea that people buy for their reasons, not yours. And I think that's really at the core of what you're talking about, is that too many people come in and they just want to sell you on everything and how wonderful it is. And people check out and they stop listening. And
Yep.
quick little story. I had a roommate many, many years ago who worked for a company called Neat Receipts before you could do that with your phone. And they just had airport kiosks and whatnot. And he was not like a great salesman per se. Like if you met him, he was just kind of real laid back guy, but he had some of the highest sales in the company. And it's because of two reasons. It's because he listened and because he really knew his product. And so when people had questions and they really wanted to get that context of how it solved their problems, to your point, he wasn't trying to push a feature or have some thin answer, or he really knew it pretty thoroughly. And I was always very impressed. I'm always very impressed with people who can be that natural in sales. Something that's interesting with that is I think something that people struggle with sometimes in sales is just getting the confidence to put themselves out there and be in front of people. Do you feel like that sales approach kind of makes that feel a little bit less intimidating from just kind of getting confidence and chatting with people?
I think so, because one thing I've learned later in life is I'm an extroverted introvert. Like I'm not the stereotypical sales guy.
Mm-hmm.
People love talking about themselves. That's great for me, who's an introvert, because I go talk to people about selling them something and I just shut up and let them talk about themselves. That's what they want to do anyways.
Yeah.
And so they just sit there and talk. And I've had customers tell my boss, like, dude, Jeff is seriously the best person at your company I've ever worked with. He just listens. You can just tell he's listening.
Well, it's funny. So just a recent story I'll share. In this very moment, I'm dealing with some things where I had a salesperson come in and sell me a bunch of stuff that I later, after 2 weeks of working with them, changing all my setup here, I found yesterday that none of this stuff actually exists, right? I bought all this stuff. They sold it all to me. It sounded good. They're real products that exist in this company, this service they provide, but they just aren't available here, right? And so, that person, to your point, was here talking and selling. Their only goal was to sell, close the deal. And normally I sort that out pretty fast, and I didn't sort it out this time. We're talking about phone services, not that big of a deal, but it's turned to a big deal now. And as you're talking, I think that person, he was very slick. He was just trying to close the deal. Probably had a quota he had to meet during the day, and just however he's going to do it. And then he'll let somebody else figure it out.
Yeah.
Obviously, because he's ghosted me in the last 2 days now. So that is the type of salespeople most people are scared of being, right? So they push away from sales. They come out of school and somebody says, hey, go be a salesman. I don't want to be a quote unquote used car salesman. I don't want to be a salesman. That's too much work.
Yeah.
But when you get further into your career and you pick up on a point you made earlier, which is we're all salesmen in some way or another, you just realize that it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be slick. It doesn't have to be something that's where your point is to convince someone they need something they don't. I mean, oftentimes for me, my business, and I definitely want to hear more about how it translates back into your current business from you, but it turns into being a solution provider. What's the problem? Let them talk. Tell me what the problem is. And then I am going to try to give you a solution. And for me personally, if I cannot deliver a solution for you, a reasonable one, a good one, I will tell you up front, I'm sorry, I don't have it. Not your guy. I'm not going to switch to you to sell something else. And that does mean I will probably lose out on many sales up front because I'm not pushing for these hard sales. But I do realize it comes back to me later in people that are happy that I didn't charge them or make them pay for something that they ultimately would have been unhappy with. It always comes back around, which I'm in my goal is to have a long-term relationship with people, not just close a sale and then get them out of here because they know where I am every day also. So they'll come back and find me if I give them sell them a bag of lies or something. So I can't do that. So that type of sales I'm with all day long. It's comfortable. It's just relationship building and hearing people out.
Yeah. And to your point, I worked for a software company that I remember my boss pushing me to close deals, pushing me, right? And I'm lucky to have an older sibling that's 17 years older than I am. And he's been extremely successful. So he's given me a lot of advice. And one of the advice he's given me is like, hey, you're young in your career, but these people you're meeting, you're going to run into them later on in your career. So I didn't want to hurry and sell them something that was going to hurt them or wasn't really exactly what they needed, because my boss needed to close a deal. I wanted to sell something that was right for them because I know I'm only going to be at the software company for X number of years. I'm going to be somewhere else later down the road. Yeah. Right. And I want to have those relationships when I'm at other places or in other situations when I can call on that person and they can go, oh, this is Jeff. I can trust him.
Sure.
So I'm going to ask you, now that you're kind of out of the software sales space and you're making saddles and running a leather business, how do you find that balance of being a good person, right? And just not selling someone they don't need, but also making sure that you keep the lights on, because at some level, I think it's easy to talk ourselves out of selling stuff. Particularly, I know a lot of folks, myself included, will kind of get imposter syndrome about something and then feel like, maybe this isn't good enough for what it is that you're asking for or that you need. And we'll almost talk ourselves out of even selling it to them because we don't quite feel we're in the right spot. And I think that's a little bit of the dance when you're the business owner versus the salesperson for a big company, is how do you make sure that you're confident enough in what you're selling that you can really make sure that you're going to deliver something. And playing the long game is great, but you still have to close some deals to keep the lights on. So how is that approach a little bit different as a entrepreneur for your saddle shop versus what you've done in the past?
I've actually found it to be extremely more beneficial in my shop than it was in previous careers. And I think one of the reasons why is horse people talk to horse people, and all they love to do is talk about horse stuff. And I've actually changed the way other people in my area sell saddles. Like, I don't know if they're mad at me now because I do this. I don't really care. But the way I look at it is, I remember 10 years ago buying a saddle for my horse and it not fitting and going, crap, I got to freaking now sell this saddle. So when I went off on my own, first thing I did was, you buy a saddle from me, you get 14 days to try it out. Try it on your horse and go for a good 2-4 hour ride. Make sure it fits the horse and then make sure it fits you. Because after 4 hours, you're going to know if you like that saddle or not. You ride on it for 30 minutes, you're not quite sure. I'm going to tell you what, that's a life customer. Not only that, when they go to their barn to saddle up their horse and their friend goes, "Ooh, you got a new saddle. Where'd you get that?" And they're like, "Oh, actually, I'm just trying it out. I just bought it from CJ Bean Saddlery and they're just letting me try it out. I have 14 days to try it out. And if it doesn't work, I can return it for full refund." And they're like, "Wait, what?" I mean, I get so many people come in like, "Hey, I want to see what saddles you got because I hear you let me try them out beforehand." I'm like, "Yeah, I even have some new ones in here." They're like, "Even the new ones you'll let me try out?" "Yeah."
Jeff, can you give us a little context around this? Because not all of us are horse folks. I'm not a horse guy. I'm a saddle guy. So there's all these questions jumping up. Like, one is, are you selling custom saddles? Like, are you selling inventory stock saddles? And then the follow-up question is going to be, how is that your model different from the more common model? What's the big difference here? Why would other people not give their customers 14-day trial?
So I custom build saddles, and my custom built saddles, they don't take delivery on that saddle until it's guaranteed that they've sat in it. They know it fits. I fit the horse. I fit the tree on the horse. When I go deliver the saddle, I fit it on the horse. There's a whole process on a custom build. Now, I take saddles in on trade, or I might find some saddles online that are, a good deal because they're just beaten up. And I do a lot of saddle repairs. And so I was just like, oh, I can pick that up and I can repair it and I can sell it. And so I found by having, at least 20 to 30 saddles in my shop for sale, it gets people in my shop looking at saddles, but it generates those custom orders of chaps, saddlebags, breast collars, belts, those custom leather work that I love doing. I would say 80% of the people that buy a saddle from me order some kind of custom leather good from me.
That's cool.
Now, how am I different than others? Every shop around here, if you go buy a saddle, you buy it as is, whether it's brand new or used. The second you walk out the shop, it's yours. 0-day return policy. You walk out of the store, you cannot turn around and walk back in and say, hey, I literally just bought this 30 seconds ago. Can I return it? Nope.
Is there some inherent risk to you buy it, what you see is what you get, you leave, it's yours versus yours 14A? Is it a lack of confidence in a product? Is it that you have more confidence in your upfront sales and solutioning up front than they do? Or where's the rub there? What's the difference? Because my first thought is that, well, you must be really confident in your ability to fit a saddle to be able to give them that 14 days. Because I would assume you probably think that not many people are going to take you up on the 14 days.
So I think it's the reason why other places just don't offer it is because that's how it's always been. You don't do free trials. You don't give them the opportunity to try things out. You just buy saddles. You buy it and you're stuck with it. I actually will go out to people and I do saddle fittings. I do charge a little fee for it, but I'll go out and do saddle fittings. And when I go out there, the first thing I do is I say, well, let's check your saddle first. And I would say 30% of the time, they're having me come out and bring my saddles to fit on their horse because they're saying their saddle doesn't fit. And in reality, their saddle does fit. But they've watched so many of these YouTube videos from so many different people that don't really know how to do saddle fitting that they are all of a sudden convinced that their saddle doesn't fit their horse. And some people are like, oh, that's a great opportunity. Why are you fitting their saddle? I've even told them like, hey, I would love to sell you a saddle, but let's fit your saddle first to make sure it doesn't fit. And sometimes their saddle fits. Sometimes it's just they're cinching it up in the wrong location. Sometimes it's honestly, I hate to say it, but sometimes it's the rider. The rider's sitting in it off balance. You know, there's so many variables, right? But I gain that trust. So you mentioned something earlier about being that consultative approach or that trusted advisor. My approach in every career, but definitely as a saddle builder, is to be a trusted advisor. I want to be known as the expert. I want to be known as someone that they can trust 100% to be looking out for their best interest, not mine.
So there's an interesting psychology concept called loss aversion, that once we have something and we love it, we own it, right? That's why people will do a 30-day trial of a mattress, any of those kind of things, is because they know that for the most part, once you have it and you get used to it, then all of a sudden you're starting to think of what your life would be like without it, and you don't want to get rid of it. But on the other side of that, sometimes, particularly with a custom saddle, these are not inexpensive purchases. And so, have you ever encountered somebody who bought something and then maybe they just had buyer's remorse and then you're getting a custom saddle returned? And if so, how do you kind of deal with that?
So I don't do a 14-day trial on a custom saddle.
Okay. Good clarification.
Yeah, good clarification there. The custom saddle, they're involved in the whole process, right? So there's plenty of opportunities for them to say, I don't like it. Now, I have a saddle that I built for someone in my shop right now that's for sale, that someone can buy. The reason it's for sale is when it got done, the customer all of a sudden was just like, you know what? That's not quite what I wanted. I actually think I want a Wade. Now, this is a client of mine that's been a client of mine for 3 years. Really good client, bought other stuff. So I said, okay, I'll build you another one. So that now is sitting in my shop for sale, and I am now building them a custom Wade saddle. If I build a custom saddle for someone and they pick it up and they're like, this is not what we talked about, I mean, we're going to have a conversation. I've never had that happen because it's not like, hey, here, I'm going to order it. And then all of a sudden I build it. And then the next time they see me is when it's done. No, I'm talking to them throughout the process. They're coming out and checking it. One thing I do with all my custom builds is they get a picture book, a coffee table picture book of that saddle being built throughout the whole process. The very first picture on that cover of that book is them holding the saddle tree. So they're involved that whole saddle process and they get pictures throughout. And that's a great conversation thing for them. They love it. They think it's the coolest thing to have sitting on their coffee table at home.
That's brilliant.
I imagine the fact that it was really made for me, and here's a proof of it, is a positive thing. But that also, as simple as that sounds, that does sound like that's not the norm. It's. I know some of the older saddle guys I've met over the years, they definitely are not very interactive. In fact, they want to talk to you once or twice and then leave them alone until the saddle is done because they're working. That involvement.
Yeah.
What is it your previous background, your corporate background, that gave you the kind of the thought that type of involvement is what these new customers want? I kind of say that this is where your corporate life and your saddle making life is kind of merging and supporting each other.
Yeah. So I think the level of involvement, there's two reasons for it. One, as a consumer, that's what I would want. Okay. So it goes back to my whole thing that I've always said. People don't care what you know until they know how much you care. But the business side of it is I want them to remember me. I want them to speak highly of me. I want them, whenever they run into someone, be like, oh, Jeff was with me throughout the whole process. Jeff took care of me. There was no guessing. Oh, well, what about this or that? I was there. You know, oh, he didn't just make that decision for you. No, I did. You know, yes, it takes additional time. And I know some older saddle builders, including my mentor, he's just like, Jeff, you're nuts. I can't believe you do that. No, don't do that. Do not do that. But it works. It works for me. And I'm going to tell you what, I get more sales. I had a lady come in. I'm doing a saddle for her right now. She came in and saw me doing a custom headstall for someone. She goes, I didn't know you did custom headstalls. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm building you a custom saddle. Like what's a headstall? Right? I mean, that's easy. She goes, could you do one with the Teton Mountains on it? I'm like, yeah. So I did one with the Teton Mountains. I mean, there's more opportunities for her to be in my shop to buy more from me.
That's awesome. And I bet because of those relationships and that table book, you probably don't have to do a ton of marketing. I bet you have a lot of word of mouth sales. I bet those books, I mean, I'm trying to think of what's my equivalent of that and all the work that I do, because I think that's pretty brilliant, not just to help them tell the story of how custom it is and whatnot, even when they're not in the saddle, but just having it as something that's kind of nice to sit on a coffee table. Man, that's just a great marketing takeaway for anybody who visits their house. So anyway, you got the wheels turning a little bit on kind of what's my equivalent of that. But yeah, I guess with that, do you really even have to do much marketing, or does your sales acumen kind of amplify and keep you busy?
90% of my business is word of mouth, and I am currently extremely busy.
Well, let's not be mistaken. That is marketing, though.
Right. Yes.
That is absolutely marketing. You're just that works. That should be included. I mean, you'd probably do it so naturally people don't even see it, but that is marketing work.
Yeah.
I should clarify, you're not doing any advertising.
Yeah, I'm not doing any paid advertising. I've got 3 people lined up right now for custom builds, right? So word of mouth is treating me really well. But I do want to grow the brand. And to do that, I am going to have to learn how I'm going to scale, which is would be tricky.
I know a podcast you can listen to about that. It has some great tips on exactly that topic. Now, I did want to ask, I think many leather workers, I go back to confidence and tying confidence to sales and whatnot, but I think many leather workers or crafters in general, they kind of freeze up when it's time to talk about price, things like that. How do you kind of make that transition a little bit smoother? Any recommendations on going from that sales relationship piece to the ask when it comes to giving the price?
That's a tough question, because a lot of times newer leather workers, newer saddle builders, right? They're transitioning from hobby builders to doing it as a business. And that's really hard for, I think, a lot of people. And I think it's hard because they don't understand the difference. And so I'm fortunate enough to have owned a few businesses, a few companies myself, to know that a business is its own entity. Like literally it's its own entity, and it's got to stand on its own.
Right.
And it's got to be able to pay me a wage and still be profitable on top of that. And so too many people starting off look at it like a hobby, and they also go onto Etsy and go, well, this is what people are charging on Etsy. So this is my competition. This is what I got to charge. It's a challenge, right? You also have to look at your skill level, right? If you're just starting off and your skill is not quite there, you got to learn to sit there and go, okay, my skill's not quite there, or the skill is there, and it's taken me 4 hours to do something that should only take me 30 minutes. Well, unfortunately, you're going to have to charge the 30-minute price and choose the other time as education hours.
So I think that's all great, but I think kind of additionally, there's plenty of people who maybe they're even very talented. They just don't feel comfortable asking for money. I know plenty of people that are the other way. They're not incredibly talented and they feel real comfortable asking for money.
Right.
But I think that a lot of, craftsmen, traditional craftsmen, more modern artists, I think that's where some people struggle is even if they know their pricing and everything, just kind of getting the price out. There's some kind of hesitation that they feel guilty for charging money for doing what they do. And so I guess really from either of you gentlemen, any thoughts or tips on getting more comfortable with the ask?
You just got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say the same thing. You just got to do it. I think that fear, probably most of us do have that fear. We're all nervous about giving our price and asking, going through that sales process, that close process, if you will. And when you formalize it and you make it really structured, it makes it even more scary for some people. So, but it's just a matter of practice. You've got to understand that, your passion, which you're very comfortable with, your craft, your passion is not your business. The business is everything outside the passion and craft, right? And passion and craft and desire do not make you a business owner. What makes you a business owner is having goals, setting them and saying, this is to generate revenue. And to generate revenue, I need to do all of these things. I've got to pay taxes, I got to do books, blah, 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 but I've got to ask for the money, right? And I know the one thing I always say is be confident with your price, put it out there fearlessly, and don't flinch, right? When the customer leaves, whether they take the deal or not, then you can question yourself and go through that whole internal turmoil about did I do this right, or did I do this wrong? But in front of the customer, you got to be confident in what you're doing, and you got to be willing to also not get the sale. And that is a very tough thing for a lot of young, or not young, but new people that want to desire to be in business. They're so fearful of missing the sale and missing the dollar that they're taking they're taking $1 when they should be waiting for the $100 bill coming from the next customer, right? And that's just a fear thing, in my opinion. Jeff, I mean, what would you say?
I would say change the fear of them saying no to losing a sale to be thankful that they said no, because now you have time to work on things that are worth your time.
I like to tell people if you think about it like this, you have, I don't know, let's pick out a number. You have 10 slots in your business for customers this month. You can be nervous about giving your price. You give a lower price. You fill all 10 of your slots with, I'll go back to $1 customers, whatever your widget is, your thing you're selling, $1 customers. Or you could fill 5 slots this month with $100 customers. You're going to go further if you hold back and have confidence in your price and you sell your items, you sell your services I don't think you need to go above and beyond and try to, I'm not saying rip people off by no means, but if you're selling a $100 widget, hold fast with that. My widget is worth $100. If not, you're just shooting yourself, selling yourself short and shooting yourself in the foot later. I certainly, when I was younger, I came out of college, I was so nervous by people saying no, because I really needed those dollars to pay rent, right? That I would take any customer, and as soon as that customer showed any sign of hesitation about the price I just gave them, I'd say, well, but we can do this, but we can do that. And I start to devalue myself and the product. And I was fortunate to have a customer, in fact, tell me to stop it. He said, knock it off, dude. You don't have to do that. And it was a customer that told me that, actually. I guess I offended him so much by how shaky I was with how I was delivering things that he took time to pull me aside and say, you're doing it wrong. I would have paid this and I would have done this. And that's where I started to feel a little more confident. But again, I think the corporate background that we have, a lot of our peers in the space don't have that. And so they haven't had a chance to practice those skills. They haven't had a chance to practice their skill, especially in an environment where it didn't directly impact their pocket, right? Immediately. That's an advantage that we've had. We've had that sales experience. We've had the ability to have those conversations and build those proposals and deliver things a certain way, knowing that we're still going to get paid. But now when it's shoes on the other foot, where everything you sell is going to affect whether or not you can pay your bills this month, it does ramp things up. And I think that's where that fear starts to creep back in. but you got to get over it. You got to work through it.
One thing I will add too, it also depends on the type of work you want to do, right? If you want to be a high volume, low quality type of person, that's one thing. But I'm not talking to that audience right now. I'm talking to those leather crafters who are artists, who are have really mastered this craft. Okay. If you are scared to ask for what you're worth, and let's say the market's $50 for something, and you ask for $10, you're going to be known as the cheap person. Your work could become so amazing that it's worth $100, like beyond the market. The market is going to consider you a cheap quality item, even though us other crafters know that your quality is way better than ours. The market's going to view you as a low quality item because you've priced it as a low quality item.
That's a tough position to work your way out of too later.
Yeah. And I think once you know what your price is and you can kind of hold firm to it. I have a friend named Derek Kinney, and he's was a financial advisor. He sold his business, and now he does a lot of speaking. And he kind of has a little bit of a mantra that is, tell me yes, tell me no, tell me now so I can go. And that's a little cut and dry for a lot of people, but it gets to the heart of, this is the price. And if this is not part of your reality, that's okay. It may not be the right fit. And I have to be okay with that as somebody who is selling a product, selling a service, because I know that if I linger in that, I may eventually talk myself into a bad spot. And so that kind of forward momentum, sure, he's been disappointed about some of the events that he wishes he could have been at because maybe his price didn't fit, things like that. And there are always, some allowances of where something might be valuable for marketing and things like that. But at the end of the day, he's got a product. He knows what that product is worth, and not everybody's his customer for that. And that's sometimes difficult to kind of go with that. So speaking of building and selling businesses, this is something you have a little experience with, and having built several previous businesses and whatnot. Is there anything that you do when you start, like when you started your saddle business, that you thought about kind of starting with an exit in mind from that previous experience? Is there anything different in how you structured your business or how you do your sales process, having been an entrepreneur who's gone through building and selling different ventures in the past?
Yeah. So this one, I started with no exit in mind. This is something I will do until I die. I will probably set my shop up to where I can push myself around in a wheelchair and get around and keep doing it. So this is a little different for me. Other businesses I have done have been more, what can I do successfully and then sell? I actually have started a business with the whole plan of selling it as soon as I did it. Others, I did not have an exit in mind, but then did exit. But the saddle business is not one I plan to exit.
Magnus, you asked about, previous businesses and things like that, but I hear experience in Jeff's, answer, in that he's already gone through that process with other businesses and understands what it means to, get into business, get out of business. And so it's not, I don't hear you blindly saying, I'm going to do this forever. I hear you saying almost, maybe I'm reading between the lines too much because, we're in similar businesses in many ways, but my previous experience has told me that this is what I want to do and that I'm not going to be willing to sell this, or I will sell it. I'm a little different. I'm structuring my business to be sold, even if I don't want to sell it in the future. I just want it to be sound like that, where I could hand it off to someone who wanted to, because I'm thinking more about, longevity, right? If I'm not able to work tomorrow, is it still function without me here every day? It doesn't right now, by the way. So I've got work to do. But my feeling about that is based on my other experiences, right? Where I know I have to have certain things set up. If I didn't have that previous experience, if I didn't have the corporate background, if I didn't have conversations like this with guys like Magnus and other business owners to know that these are pitfalls that I could run into if I'm not careful in the future, I wouldn't be thinking like that, So I don't hear you say blindly, I'm not going to sell my business. This is just what I'm going to be doing forever. I hear there's more to it than just that.
The one thing I will say, if you're starting a business with an exit in mind, the exit you have in mind is not going to be the exit. It's just not going to happen. If it does, then write a book and become filthy rich, because that's freaking amazing. The biggest thing I learned from my first business that I wish I would have known before is there's 3 things now that I prioritize with my other businesses and with this one. And that is health, self, and wealth. Number 1 important thing, no matter what, is my health. My first business, I drove myself in the ground. I'm actually still physically, medically paying the price from my first business. So your health needs to be number 1, no matter what. Number 2, self, that includes your family. You've got to do whatever's best for you and your family. And then number 3 is the wealth, meaning the business. Then you do what's best for the business. I made that mistake on my first one. It almost cost me a lot. A marriage almost cost me a good chunk of my life. But I was fortunate enough and blessed to have a good enough groundwork to be a hard worker and have the guidance of those around me to make the right pivots at the right time. You have to be able to be agile. You cannot be stubborn. Every business owner that's stubborn fails. I truly believe that. When I say stubborn, stubborn towards business. You have to be able to change and learn and be willing to change the direction you're going. And I was fortunate enough to do that. Fortunate enough to have someone come to me and offer me, luckily enough, to exit. And I'm so grateful I did. First, I actually said no the first time, and then he came back and offered more. So I said yes.
Hey, Jeff, I know we're probably running a little long. One more important question for you. Those first few businesses you ran and operated and ultimately exited from, did you know they were setting you up to open your saddle shop? Was that the ultimate goal? Did you have that in mind already?
No. Nope. This was always a hobby, always something passionate about, something I loved. And really what got me into this is I got burnt out with the corporate world. I got burnt out with dishonesty. There's a lot of corporations who, I would say majority are honest, but there's a lot of dishonesty within those organizations. And I got fed up with it, burned me out. And I finally was just like, I got tired of working. I missed working for myself. Told my wife, I'm done. What to do now? And I was just like, well, I'm going to finally do something I'm passionate about.
It's good stuff, Jeff. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it.
It's been great. And I know that Odin and I's spouses are probably going to hear this and kind of nudge us and be like, hey, you listening about this health, self, and wealth thing? That seems pretty sound. I'm sure it will come up, but
we'll edit that out.
But this has been great. I really appreciate the conversation. Just before we wrap up, if you could leave the listeners with just one piece of sales advice that every maker should hear, what would that be?
Honesty. You just got to be your true self, and you just have to be honest with your customers. As painful as it can be, honesty, because your customers have to be able to trust you. Mm. They may not like you. They might tell someone they don't like you, but he's honest, because someone might hear it and be like, you know what? He fessed up though. He told you messed up. He didn't try to hide it. He easily could have hidden that.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
I agree. Absolutely. Those are hard lessons learned. It's far more valuable to be that way than to try to get things over on people and have to fight and maintain that posture.
Yeah.
Indefinitely. Just be upfront about it. Take your lumps, keep it moving, apologize, and keep it moving.
And I know you said one thing, but I'm going to leave two. Sorry.
Go for it.
Be excited. As a business owner, I admit there's probably 2 to 3 days a month that I curl up in a ball and cry in a corner. And I wonder, what the hell am I doing? But I remind myself that tomorrow's another day, and I get excited that tomorrow's another day. And I love what I do. And that excitement, people see that and absorb it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're going to have crappy days. Be excited tomorrow.
So it's another chance to do it all over again to get it right.
Well, thank you for hanging out with us and kind of sharing some sales insights. If people are interested in finding more about you online, what's your website? Tell them your social handles.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram, CJ Bean Saddlery, cjbean.com. And all my handles are listed on that website. Nice and simple, CJ Bean.
Simple is great. So that was a great conversation. Jeff he has a different approach that I really appreciate. We run into so many crafters and makers and business owners that have this variety of business experience, and it kind of frames their paradigm on life and business. And Jeff's, when we first met him in Sheridan, I believe it was, when he was taking our class, it was obvious that his background in these large company, these sales organizations made him different. Not better, not worse, but different. And I think his approach, and he shared a lot of that today with us as we talked, I think is something we can all learn from. You don't have to spend 20, 30 years in corporate to understand, or get lessons from them. You talk to guys like Jeff, you talk to some other folks that we've had on the podcast, we will have in the podcast in the future. In this case, it's about sales and really having a different approach to sales and kind of demystifying it, as well as taking some of the pressure out of it by just being authentic and being, more of a solution or consultative type of approach to sales, which is, I like to think that's what I do here. And it's nice to know that other people are doing that and having success with it as well.
Yeah. And I think that it's funny. I'm glad that we have Jeff on the podcast, because those are the kind of guys that you don't hear self-promoting very much. So you don't get as much opportunity to learn from them. A lot of the people that are out there on the internet that are saying, get 100,000 views on YouTube in 2 weeks with my, whatever it is, but the way that they're selling to me makes me uncomfortable, but it's, it's kind of like, well, they're successful. And most of the time, those are the people that you have the opportunity to learn from, and they don't always teach you the best habits. And I think one of the big takeaways from talking with Jeff was just, more than selling things, just kind of be human and personable and connect with people and create relationships and give those opportunities for people to just feel that connection, because that will keep them engaged. And particularly when you're doing custom work, I think that it's pretty important for people to have that level of trust, because, their horse is not an inexpensive investment. And so they want something that's comfortable, that sets them and the horse up for success. And so I'm not as much of a horse person myself, so I'm not as familiar with how personal of an experience that probably really is and probably really should be.
His approach that he shared with us today really sets you up for recurring sales and really sets you up for a long-term relationship with people, not just the one item you're selling, but by being honest and authentic and being more concerned about what they need versus just getting them to make one purchase. And I think he shared this in the conversation. They tend to come back because they're almost surprised by that approach. It's different from whatever else is doing. And it builds trust, and it builds a level of comfort with them that makes them want to share with their people around them. Hey, I met a guy and this is how he treated me well. He didn't sell me something I didn't need. I'm going to go back to him for this other thing. And when they come back, they already have a relationship. They already have a level of trust, which allows him to get them products and goods that they do need.
As he talked about that, that's really the way that I've done business for a long time. And I think why a lot of people trust me is because, even in the marketing space, I'll have a lot of people, my kind of domain knowledge is in search engine optimization, how things show up on Google. And I'll have a lot of people in the past just be ready to throw money at me because they're like, somebody said I need SEO, or I heard that, or somebody tried to sell me on it, and now I realize I need it. And I would just try to really understand at the core, like, what is it they're trying to accomplish? Historically, particularly when I was doing the agency stuff more full time, there was really maybe 80% of the potential customers I talked to, I was like, I could take your money. I don't know that it's going to get you what you think that you want from this. And I would like to recommend these other services, and I would like to connect you with the people that could do that. And because of that, I have a lot of really long-term relationships, and those always, a lot of those people, they connected me with bigger companies over time. And so, I could have taken the quick win and had that gotcha moment. I could have even done great work, but because that's not really, it wasn't going to help them accomplish their goal. I'm quite frankly talked a lot of people out of hiring me over the years.
Yeah, it's funny. We do the same thing here where I talk people out of buying things from us when I tell them, if I were you, I wouldn't do it. That's one of my favorite lines here. And it cracks up my team when I tell a customer, yes, we could do this. Yes, we could do that. Yes, we could repair your bag and build these things for you. But if I were you, I wouldn't pay me that much money to do it. And so I'm uncomfortable asking you to do that today. And people are shocked and taken off guard by that. And then, what they do? They normally, after they get over the shock, they normally walk around the store, look at some other things, and they buy something else from us. And I feel better that I didn't take their money for doing, work that they really didn't need done.
One other takeaway that I will say that I'm already thinking about how to apply that in different applications is the idea that he mentioned that he takes these pictures and he creates the coffee book about, the process of the custom saddle, because that is brilliant to me. Just as a marketer and an advertiser, I'm already kind of thinking of the different kind of what is my version of the coffee table book when I do work with people, because not only is this a highly custom thing that they've just purchased, but people only get exposure to it when they're on their horse. And this really creates an artifact of the work that really gives other people a lot of opportunity to ask questions about. They can take it with them. If somebody's like, hey, have you worked with Jeff before? What'd you think? And they said, well, it turns every customer into a sales team for them. And I think that's very, very clever. I think it's very genuine and personal. And I think as a customer, they probably love it. But as a marketer, I'm already trying to figure out what the equivalent is for me and my business, that I can do that for my customers to kind of turn them into that street team almost for any of the things that I might try to promote myself. So
I also tried to create an equivalent to that in my business. And I think for us, we do that by offering some type of unexpected personalization, right? It may be adding their initials to something. And maybe, if they buy a large custom bag from us, which I don't do a lot of that anymore, but if I buy a large custom bag, I may create an additional zipper pouch to go inside the bag for them, right? In the same style. They didn't ask for it. It didn't really cost me anything else to do it, but they weren't expecting it. And because I took time to listen to them, I took time to add those little extra treats in there for them, it turns them into lifelong customers, and they love talking to people about it. I found anytime a customer can tell their friends and their family and their network that something was made just for them. Like, no. Yeah, he sells this bag, but this one particularly was made just for me. And I can prove it to you because it has my name on the inside of it. Those little things mean the world. And there's things that we probably don't think are very much. Like Jeff probably doesn't think that book is a big deal, right? Simple thing. He has pictures. Why not put it in a book? But to the customer, it represents the world. And anytime we can find a way to deliver that additional experience, personalized experience to a customer, I think that you're going to find yourself building friends. You're going to find yourself building long-term customers that they're going to come back to you over and over again. And more importantly, to your point earlier, these are customers that will talk about you in favorable ways to their networks.
I think all of those things definitely tie into the theme of this evening's conversations around just to be human and have connection. And sometimes the best thing you can do in sales is not try to sell too hard. So some really great takeaways, and looking forward to kind of hearing what anybody else has to share. If you have any tips, you're listening, and you have anything you want to share with others, hope that you'll get on the social channels on Instagram, Facebook, Beyond the Workbench, and share some comments on this episode. If you have any tips that you want to share as well. We also started a Patreon recently, so you can find that on Beyond the Workbench. And you can find a lot of information on beyondtheworkbench.com. That'll take you to the podcast. And at some point, that link will take you to a site or somewhere that you can kind of parse out and find all these different kind of things that we have going on. But I think that's all for this evening. Anything else you want to add?
No, nothing else from me. In addition, feel free to reach out to us, connect with us on the different channels. Of course, we have our personal channels as well. I'm Odin Leather on Instagram. Is probably the fastest way to connect with me. And I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear feedback about the episodes, as well as ask questions. Maybe these are questions we can work into future episodes as we continue to grow this podcast library, as well as this group of interviews and conversations with other makers. So thanks again.
I should probably do a better job of self-promoting in some of that as well. I'm no Odin Clack. I'm not nearly as exciting to follow, but you can find me on Instagram at Magnus Opus. And every now and then I'll share a little behind the scenes look at what's going on in life. That's fun. But yeah, connect with us. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to connect with you as well. And who knows, maybe you'll be one of our next guests yourself.
Post-production by Instrumental Media.